everyone, Jeff with 1F here for Native Instruments. In this video, I'm going to walk you through Kontakt 8 and how to get the most out of all of the features in this ridiculously powerful music production tool. Whether you're brand new to Kontakt or you've been using it for 20 years, I still think you're going to find some interesting information in this video. There's so many new things that have been added to Kontakt 8, and we're going to show a brief overview of all of those new features. We're going to start by how to get Kontakt up and running, installing libraries. We're going to look at the new tools that have been introduced in Kontakt 8, create some multi-layered instruments, and a whole bunch of other things. Of course, the video is going to be split up into chapters so you can jump to something really quickly that you want to learn more about. We'll also have some links in the description to other videos that go into further details, including the Kontakt 7 video, which has some great legacy features in it. So first off, what is Kontakt? Kontakt is mainly a sampler and an instrument platform. It lets you load instruments that were created in Kontakt, which we call Kontakt libraries, as well as letting you create your own custom Kontakt instruments. Many people over the last 2 decades have been creating libraries themselves for Kontakt and then selling them online. You can even create your own very complex Kontakt patches, as well as using the new system called Leap, which gives you a much simpler way to create and get going with loops or samples on your own. I should mention that even since the time of filming this video, Kontakt 8 has had a few little tweaks to their UI. So I'm going to show you the differences right now. Just be aware that if you are an old version of Kontakt 8, you're going to see some differences. In the original version of Kontakt 8, where we had things like the Contact menu, File, and Library, now in Kontakt 8, you can see that the File menu is gone, and we've got just a drop-down with all of the relevant things that you would have seen under File. The Library is just an icon. We've also got a new icon here, which allows you to get to the rack view of the instrument really quickly. So it allows you to go back and forth between the library and looking at the instrument and digging into all of the details. The view menu has also changed slightly. You'll see at the bottom now we have the little keyboard icon that allows you to turn the keyboard on and off. And then over on the left-hand side, you can get to the small browser by clicking this little drop-down if you're in a library already. And you can see that the libraries are now shown in horizontal fashion. The nice thing about this is that you can actually sort these either by default, so by alphabetical, or you can actually go in and say, I want to customize. I always use Alicia's keys. That one is just top of my list. So put that one right at the top. And now you get to your libraries that you want to really quickly from this little mini browser that you have on the side when you're not in the full library. So there are 2 different versions of Kontakt. This one here is the full version of Kontakt 8, and there's also the Kontakt 8 player that is free and gives you access to all of the new tools that they've just introduced. When you're purchasing a third-party library, you just want to make sure that that library itself doesn't need the full version of Kontakt 8 if you only have the player. For example, here is a library called the Resonator, made for the full version of Kontakt. So Kontakt 8 player, completely free. All you have to do is go download Complete Start from the Native Instruments website, make an account, download that, and with that, not only do you get Kontakt 8 player, but you get a couple of other new things like the Massive X player, as well as a couple of expansions and a bunch of instruments. So definitely worth heading over there and picking that up if you're brand new to all this, and just give it a try. See if it's something that's going to work with your workflow. The full version of Kontakt 8, of course, has everything that you get in Kontakt Player, but it's got a bunch of deeper features and allows you to create your own deep multi-sampled instruments within Kontakt, aside from the Leap functionality. So Kontakt 8 is a paid purchase, and you can buy it by itself, or if you pick up one of the complete bundles, you will get Kontakt 8 included in all 3 of the different versions. Let's go figure out how to actually install Kontakt on your computer. So when you're installing Kontakt, you're going to use something called Native Access. You're going to want to download Native Access from the Native Instruments website, and you've got your choice of older Macs using the Intel chips, newer Macs using the M series of chips, and then we've got Windows as well. Once Native Access 2 is installed, open the program. You're going to have to log in with a native ID, so you're going to want to set that up from the website as well. Once you're logged in, click on Available, and right here you're going to see a tab that says Applications. I already have Kontakt installed, so it's not showing up for me, but it will show up for you. You'll also see instruments, expansions, and effects, and other things that you can install onto your computer. If I just click this Kontakt tab here, these are all Kontakt libraries that I still have yet to install on my computer. One thing to note is that a lot of these libraries can be very, very large. If I look at this one choir library, it's 75 gigabytes. You may not have that kind of storage left on your computer to install this kind of thing. And I also should say that you will probably need sometimes 2 or even 3 times as much storage space to download the zip file, expand that zip file, and then install it. And if you don't have enough hard drive space, pick up an external hard drive like I have right here. And what I've done in this case is I have a whole bunch of libraries installed onto my SSD. I also have libraries installed onto my laptop. And so what I've done is taken my most important Kontakt libraries that I always want on my laptop, left them on the internal hard drive of the computer, and then I have bigger libraries and libraries that are maybe a little more specialized all on my external SSD. In order to change where your libraries are, click on the preferences at the bottom, and we're going to go over to File Management. Under File Management, you can see I've got a download location. So even that can be an external hard drive. Download your installation files right there. Then you have where your application location is. And for those, I leave those at the default so that they're just going right onto my computer. You always want the applications on your actual computer. And then the last one is content location. Where do you want these files actually stored? And you can see once you have something installed, I can click on the Installed tab up top and I can see where that library is. So let's look at where Arcus is. And if I look at installation path, we can see that that one is on my external SSD. But if I go to, say, the factory library, which is, in my opinion, a really important library to have on your computer at all times, that's the one that comes with the full version of Kontakt 8. So if I look at my Kontakt Factory Library 2 right here, see where that is installed, I can see that that is right on my computer. So it's ready to go. So if you wanted to change where this content location goes, just click on the Browse button, find a folder on an external hard drive, make another folder in there, call it NI Content Location or NI Content Location Remote or something where you will remember that folder. You also are going to have updates, and I can see right here that I've already got a brand new update for Kontakt 8 and a brand new update for Massive X. So all I have to do is click the Update button. It will download the files, install the update, and you're good to go. So a very seamless one-stop place to install applications, install libraries and expansions, and to also update software. Once you've installed libraries and expansions, you can quit native access 2, you don't have to have it running, and you can go right to opening up Kontakt 8, play with it in standalone mode, or you can open it as a plugin inside your DAW, which we're going to do here today inside Cubase. But first, I do recommend that you open up Kontakt 8 in standalone mode, and that means just going to your applications folder, double-clicking on Kontakt 8, and letting it open up, find all of the relevant files for the first time. And it's going to take a while to go through the things that you have installed at that point. So to open it up in standalone mode, just go to your applications folder. We're going to click on Native Instruments, and then in here, you're going to find your Kontakt 8 application. When you're in standalone mode like this, you can have it set up to just play any instrument to try sounds out. There won't be a way for you to record any MIDI information. That's why you'd want to open it up inside a DAW. But in this case, we're just going to play around with some patches. Just got to remember that you need to connect your keyboard and your speakers to Kontakt the application. Just to show you how this will work, let's load up an Arcus patch. Double click on it. So we're going to access the audio and MIDI settings up here under File, and we're going to go to Options. So make sure that under the MIDI tab, you've got whatever keyboard you have hooked up is turned on in here. And right in here, we can see that my keyboard, the Control S61 Mark III, is hooked up to port A. So we have port A, B, C, and D. And in each port, you can have multiple MIDI channels, so things can get very complex. But I just want this under port A, and if I had another keyboard hooked up to, say, my audio interface, the AF16 rig, I would just click port A right there as well. And now both keyboards, if they were hooked up through MIDI, could control Kontakt at the same time. So a really nice way for you to have multiple controllers set up in your studio. The other thing to check is audio, and if I click on audio, here I can see I want my Mac set to core audio for the driver, and then device is my AF16 rig audio interface. So you would choose whatever audio interface you have hooked up, or you would just choose your MacBook Pro speakers or whatever, your headphones if they were hooked up at that point as well. Next thing you got to look at is the sample rate. Music projects are generally at 44,100. And video projects are generally at 48,000. And I generally work on video-based projects. So almost everything I do, video games and music, are at 48,000. But Kontakt will take care of the conversion for you. So you don't really have to worry too much about it. I think most people would be best off setting it at 44,100. And the latency is going to change how much of a lag there is between you pressing the key and you hearing a sound. So right now it's 512 samples. If I just drag this down, we're gonna get a lot faster latency. It's gonna make the computer work a little harder, so if you start getting clicks and pops, you can change that. But a lot of people take their latency and take it down to something like 192 samples. Now we've got only 7 milliseconds of latency between you playing the key and actually hearing the sound. So you should be aware that these kinds of settings are also available in your DAW. And so Cubase takes care of the sample rate and the latency. Make sure you have things set up properly in each project that you're working on. So the next thing we'll do is actually load up Kontakt inside a DAW, and we're just going to use Cubase in this case. So inside Cubase, you can click this little plus button, and that's going to bring up your add track window. And here we can choose Kontakt 8, and we can give it a name. I'm just going to call this Kontakt 8 for now, and we're going to hit add track. And the first thing you see is actually the library. So it pulls up the library or the browser for Kontakt. And this can be kind of intimidating when you first look at it, especially if you have a whole bunch of libraries installed. Up at the very top right here, you can see some different things like instruments, combined tools, etc. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But the thing you need to know about the browser is these are the libraries. These are the patches or the presets for those libraries. So if I click on Alicia's keys, all I'm going to see on the right-hand side are the patches that are available for Alicia's keys. Or if I click on Analog Dreams, we're going to see only patches for Analog Dreams, a synthesizer type library. And then we can use the filters to tailor this even further. So we can say, I want some kind of synth lead. So I could click on synth lead and we see all these libraries have synth leads in them and all of these patches in all of these libraries. But I could get even further refined with this, and I can click on character and say, I want a synth lead that's clean, or I want a synth lead that's distorted. Now you're only going to see presets or patches that are distorted synth lead sounds. Let's go back to clean for a second. And when we click on a preset, you're going to get a little preview of that sound. Probably one of my favorite features of Kontakt is the previews, because before what would happen is you'd have to double click on a patch to hear it. Now all you have to do is click on the name and you get a little preview to hear, yeah, you know what, that's actually pretty close. Maybe I will load that one up. And then you click on it and now it loads up the preset. And if you ever have filters set up and you just want to go back to all the libraries again, just click this little reset button right here and you'll be back in the main browser with all of the libraries that you have installed. Another thing I should mention is if you click on a library, click on a patch, and you like it, there's a little star that you can click. And that's a way for you to save your favorite patches. So let's say I've got a bunch of starred patches on this one library. Now if I hit the little star button up top, it's going to filter just the favorite patches from that library. When you get a new library, go through it and find all your favorite patches. Put little stars beside them. And then that way, next time you open up that instrument, you can quickly get to patches that you know are going to work with your genre of music. And now we need to actually load an instrument. And to do that, all you got to do is double click on the patch. It will load up the instrument and bring you to the main Kontakt user interface, where you're going to be playing with all the parameters that you can access through whatever library or instrument that you've loaded. And it's also where we are going to be able to layer instruments over on the left-hand side, as well as access these new tools that we're going to walk through later on in the video. If you ever want to get back to the library, all you have to do is click on the library tab. And if you want to load a patch and actually play it, but not keep jumping back over to that other window, all you got to do is click this little pin right here. And now you're going to double click a patch. You can play it. Try another one. And another one. And once you're like, yeah, you know what? I actually like that patch. All I have to do is click this little X, and it's going to take me over to the instrument view so you can go and make all of your changes. So let's go back to the library one more time. I'm going to turn this pin off. We're going to reset this. And just to quickly mention, up at the top, we've got tabs that say combined. And combined presets will be patches that just have multiple layered instruments on it. And it could also be patches that, as it says here, are enhanced with tools that transform your playing in inspiring ways. So if I click on a patch, let's try this one right here. We can see up at the top, it's got some kind of tool hooked up to it. Next, we've got tools. We go through all of the different tools later in the video, really pushing what you can do with Kontakt and how you can change MIDI information. It's extremely powerful stuff. Next, we've got Leap. We're going to look at Leap later as well. Leap is a new thing in Kontakt 8, and that gives you the ability to load samples or loops, tweak them, play them in real time, play them really as you would in a traditional sampler in a very easy to use interface. Next, we've got loops and one-shots. And one thing I should mention about these loops and one-shots is every expansion that you buy comes with a whole bunch of loops and comes with a whole bunch of one-shots. And I'm specifically talking about the Native Instruments expansions right now. They used to be called machine expansions. And if you click on an expansion, you're going to see all the loops that came with this one expansion. So Backyard Jams has 405 loops. And if we click on one shots, it has 874. So all of those individual sound files can be dragged into a Leap preset. Many third-party and custom libraries are just going to show up in your browser already, but it's very easy for you to go and import other libraries that don't show up there if you want access to them straight from this browser. So just click on the little cog at the bottom here, and from here you can go and click the Add button. So let's go to this Space Age Rhythm library, and this is a third-party library. Click Open, and now we see it shows up in our custom libraries list. I'm going to click Close, scroll down. I can see this one folder for Space Age Rhythm, and I can click on any patch and load up some sounds. Just be aware that you're not going to get the previews for these kinds of patches. And in here, we've got some bossa guitar. Let's try loading that up. If you have other libraries that you've made yourself, you can also click on the User Presets button here and load up your own folders of sounds right there as well, which could be a really easy way for you to access things that you created in previous versions of Kontakt or are currently working on in Kontakt 8. And if I go back to my library, let's go to Ignition Keys, and we're going to load up a patch here. So I double click on the patch, it loads it up. We get the full Kontakt interface, and over on the left-hand side, you have basically like a mini library. So instead of going back to the full library, we can just start looking for other patches right here. We'll still get the preview and just arrow down to hear the next patch. I can double click on a patch and it will reload this instrument with whatever patch you double clicked on. And in this little search field, you can even do things like type in lead, and now I'm going to get the lead patches in Ignition Keys. I can also type in pad, and we're going to get just the pad sounds in here. Double click on that. Now we've got a pad. If you have favorites chosen, you can also just see which favorites you've got for that instrument and get to them really quickly. There's a few things up at the top that we should also mention. So under the options, that's where you can change how certain things happen under the hood. One setting in the options that I feel is really important, under the handling menu right here, if you go to MIDI channel assignment for loaded patches and change that to assign to Omni, what that means is if you now load another instrument underneath Ignition Keys in this one instance of Kontakt, it will load it up on the same MIDI channel. So if I click on this next slot to add another patch, and let's go to Melted Vibes, it loads it underneath, and now I'm hearing both patches at the same time. If I didn't have that setting on, it would have actually set this to MIDI channel 2. And this is kind of an older way of working with Kontakt in a multi-timbral way where you might want to have the first instrument on channel 1, the second one channel 2, the third one on channel 3, and so on. So I strongly recommend to set that to Omni, so every single instrument in here will respond to whatever you play on your keyboard. If you do want to go in and tweak things like which MIDI channel these are responding to, what you need to do is go up to View and turn on the instrument header. So with the instrument header, you're going to see some of that information that you're used to seeing in older versions of Kontakt. And if I click this little information button right here, I can see the MIDI channel that this is set to, and I can see the MIDI channel that this is set to. So this one was set to channel A1, port A channel 1, because I didn't have that option setting set just yet. Now every time I load an instrument inside Kontakt ever in my DAW, it's going to set the MIDI channel to Omni. So again, if you want to change that, you can click here and say, I want this on channel 2, this one on channel 1. Now I'm only hearing this one because my DAW track is set to channel 1. If I set it to channel 2, watch what we hear. Now we're hearing this instrument. So again, keep your channels set to Omni, but be aware of those different settings. You're also going to get panning and volume. Watch what happens if I change the panning on this. You can see that this little knob right here moves as well. So they've got a new way for you to think of panning and volume, as well as solo and mute. Also in the header is where you can do snapshots of an instrument, which is basically a patch, your own patch. So you can make some tweaks on an instrument. You can click this little button and save this as a new preset. So let's call it Lost in Space Jeff. I'm going to hit save. And now you're going to see that I have a new choice of patches under here called user, and it says Lost in Space Jeff. And so you'll see that this is actually another little browser that they've got built into a lot of Kontakt instruments. So I can go right here and I can go to lead and I can go to 80s wave. I can go to mallet and choose something completely different. And now over on the left-hand side, I can click this little user button and I can see Lost in Space Jeff shows up right there because I made that little snapshot of a patch. And then usually I leave the instrument header off because we've got other ways of accessing information here. Also under the view menu, you're going to see the zoom settings, and these zoom settings scale everything really nicely. So I could set it to 100%, I could set it to 75%, and just find whatever setting works best in your viewing environment. Another thing I should mention is if you click view, you can access classic view. So this classic view is what Kontakt looked like before Kontakt 8. And so in the old versions, you would find a library that you wanted to work with over on the left-hand side. You click the instruments button, you'd see the instruments, you double click on it, or you drag it over into the rack view over here. And this has been replaced now by the library. But there are situations where you want to access the classic view. And when you've done that, when you've turned it on, you get other things like this master control right here, which gives you the tuning for all of the instruments that you might have loaded in an instance of Kontakt. You've got beats per minute, which in this case is being set by Cubase, but externally, the master volume and stuff like that. The other thing it does offer you is the quick load functionality. And I know a lot of people do like using the quick load, a way to access patches that you load up all the time. I just keep it on default view myself. The next thing we're going to talk about is something that is brand new to Kontakt 8, and that is the tools section. This is available in the free Kontakt player as well as the full version of Kontakt 8. The best way to think about these tools is to imagine that they are something that is transforming your MIDI or generating MIDI for you. And we can hook this up to instruments inside Kontakt, and there's even a way, if you dig into the options, to have MIDI sent out of your project into other virtual instruments, but we'll save that for another video. So let's have a brief look at some of the main features of the factory tools in Kontakt 8. And what we should do first is actually load up an instrument of some sort. So let's go to Soul Sessions. So I click over on the Tools menu, and now in Kontakt on the left-hand side, we can stack these tools. And that's what's so cool about them, is that you're going to find tools that generate chords and tools that have maybe an arpeggiator, and you can actually use those together. So you hold down one note, it generates a chord, it goes through the arpeggiator, and now you have this complex thing that's all happening just through these tools. The first tool we'll look at is the Chords tool. Once you click on it, you get this list of presets. And the main tools have a whole bunch of presets. Some of the newer tools don't have presets, like the arpeggiator, so you just load up on its own. So clicking through the presets, you're going to hear a little piano preview of what this chord progression would be, and you'll see what these chords are all about in 1 second. So let's have a listen to a couple of them. Oh, that's really cool. Let's give that a favorite. Also very nice. Let's just click on this one here. It's called Blessed. I double click on it. And now what you see is 7 circles up at the top. And you can see all of these little rings. And those rings are showing you which note is being triggered. If you click on the chord itself, you'll actually see a regular view of the chords down here on the keyboard. And the way it works is you've got 7 chords on all the white notes, and they've got 3 octaves of those chords. So you can see how it's spread out on the keyboard down below in Kontakt. And if I look on my Mark III, you can see those same colors spread out along that with the light guide. So if I play middle C right now, you hear that chord. If I play the lower C, you hear it an octave lower and an octave higher. You get 7 custom pre-made chords, and then you can go and play them up or down the octave as you choose. And of course, we can go to each chord and change them up if we want. Let's say I like these 2 chords, but I want to change this chord a little bit. So I can click on this first chord. There's a couple of options. I could click the little magnifying glass and go choose a completely different chord. And you can see that it's keeping it all in the key of C minor that's listed up in the top here. Now that's one way to find new chords. And then another way to put new chords in here is to actually go and play it yourself. So you can click this little record button and I could put A flat major 7 chord in there. When you hit the record button, let's go to a different one right here, hit the record button, it allows you to hear individual notes. So it turns off the chords just for a second. So there's my chord right there. So let's turn off the record and now we'll hear that one. It's a pretty cool chord. And there's the new chord that I just played, my A flat major 7. So now I've got an E flat, a C minor 9, and an A flat major 7 chord. So you can change the key to any key that you want. I'm going to keep it in C minor or E flat major. That's the way I'm going to think about it when I'm playing along here. And I'm just going to put in a couple of chords. All right, so now I've got my chords in my project. So the thing to be aware with the Chords tool is not only can you just trigger them by the keyboard, but you can also drag and drop the chords right onto your track. So I could just click this little button right here and drag it into my project, and it's going to put all those chords onto MIDI tracks. I could put them wherever I want. If I double click on the chord, you can see that now we've got that A flat major 7 chord that I played and programmed in as chord number 1. And that drags all the chords, but maybe a simpler way to do it would be to drag one chord at a time. There's my first chord, and then there's my second chord that I'm playing, and then here is the third chord that I'm playing. And if you want to use that now, just remember to turn off the chord tool so you're actually just hearing the instrument again. So that's generating MIDI with the Chords tool. Other things you can do with these tools are humanize them, so you can add a little bit of variation. And if you click right here, you'll see that you can play with the timing of the chords, the velocity of the chords, and the voices. You can skip notes in a chord itself. So if I drag that up and now drag up the humanize, you can hear it's changing the voices by skipping them. So that's a way to add some variation to your chords. And you can also turn on the strum, which works just like you would think it would. So let's crank that up. Or we can strum up. Just really unique ways to take these chords and make them a lot more interesting. Another thing I should mention is that if you click on the actual title, you can go in and browse chord progressions by genre. That is a really important feature because you might be composing a certain style of music and you want to stick to just simple electronic chords. Click the electronic, keep it simple, then you've got just the kind of chord sets that have those kind of progressions in them. Don't forget that you can use this Chords tool with instruments like the session guitarists, a really great way to generate chords and have session guitarists generate all the strumming or the electric guitar patterns for you. And this little dice icon right here gives you ability to just try something random. So trying all different kinds of chords, just roll the dice and see what you get. Okay, just for fun, I've gone and added a 24-karat drums loop into this little chord progression. So what we're going to do now is look at the next tool, which is phrases. And in order to hear our phrases, let's get an instrument. So I'm going to load up a Glaze 2. Glaze 2 has lots of really neat kind of vocal patches on it. And let's go with this chopped onions one that I've got favorited. One thing I should mention is when you're playing around with stuff and you're about to load something like a phrase or a new instrument, just be aware of what you have selected up top. So if you want to load a tool like a phrase, you click up here in the tool spot and then you double click on a preset. If I go back to my tools menu, say to the chords, and I'm still on this slot right here, just be aware you're going to replace what you have as your last tool. If you want a new tool, you click in the next slot and you go back to the tools and you load that new tool. But for now, we want to keep things simple. We don't want two tools just yet. Let's just keep that one down to one tool. I'm going to go back to tools and we're going to go to phrases. Phrases work by having basically a MIDI file that is being generated, and it's a phrase that's just going to keep looping around. So you have this circle that's showing you a visual representation of the notes as it's going through. But you can take that phrase and you can start it at a different point. You can play with the timing of it. You can play how it plays, like forward and backwards. So let's have a look at some of these presets, which are basically just sets of little phrases. So we got some kind of bluesy stuff in here too. Obviously, piano isn't, the instrument that these are necessarily meant for. So you have to think a little bit outside the box when you're hearing the previews. Sometimes it's better to load it up in your instrument and hear that phrase through your actual instrument. So let's load up this easy one and hear what these phrases are all about. Very cool little phrases. So right in the middle of the phrase tool, you'll see this phrase wheel, and that is a representation of the notes that are going around in the phrase. And it's giving a representation of, lower and higher notes. We can take the rotate knob and we can move this phrase over, so it starts at a different point in that phrase. You can undo that. Let's try inverting the phrase. That's really neat. So we're hearing kind of like the same general notes, but in a different order. We can see that we have 7 different slots with different phrases on it as well. So it's not just one phrase that you get a whole bunch that are going to kind of be in the same ballpark. And of course, if we go down the octave, we get the same phrase, but lower and higher. And then if you want the whole thing to be higher or lower, you can shift everything up an entire octave. And then we can go and play with the tempo as well. So I switch up 2x. We can have it swung. We can go and hit this little dice and have a completely random pattern generated. But let's try hitting the dice on this one. And you can see what's happening is it's actually pulling up different phrases, which you can access by clicking this little magnifying glass as well. You can go in by genres and choose completely different phrases that match the style of music that you're working in. So let's get out of that little browser. And then there's a randomize button right here, which completely randomizes your pattern. I want to take this phrase itself, change the key to the key of E flat major, because that's what I'm in right now, C minor or E flat major. So we go to E flat major. Let's have a listen. That sounds great. Here we go. So the next tool we're going to look at is one called patterns. So in order to hear patterns, let's load up an Ignition Keys patch. I'm going to go to plucked strings. And let's go with this Kiss the Sky one. Then we're going to click on our tools menu up top and we're going to go to patterns. So there's patterns, and you can see a whole bunch of presets for this one. You can kind of think of it like a step sequencer and an arpeggiator. And if you click on it, you're going to get that little piano preview. So let's load up this Midnight Runner. So you can see these blue squares up here, and they don't correspond to notes per se, but what they correspond to is a visual representation of how your notes are going to be manipulated by the patterns tool. So if I hold down an E flat major triad, it's going to cycle between different positions of that triad. If I play a more complex chord, like an E flat major 7, you can hear it's kind of cycling through based on the position of these squares. So if I got rid of a couple squares here, let's see what that sounds like. You can hear for the first note, it's only going to play the bottom note of the chord that I'm holding down, and then it's going to start playing some of the upper notes. So you can think of it like representing the pattern, and you can see this low note is going to be held all the way through this first few beats. If I want that low note to be triggered every time, I could click on it, and now you're hearing that low note getting hit every time. We can click on them and disable some. And it gets even more complex than that. You can change the order of it, so you can have it go forward and then go backwards. With this one, you can see it's jumping around kind of randomly. So what other things can we do? Well, of course, we can change the rate. We can set it to 16th notes. We can add swing to it. We can humanize it so it sounds a little bit less perfect. And if we click this little arrow, we got controls for that as well. We can skip notes here and there. We can choose the duration. Make it really short. Really stuttery. We can play with the velocity. We can take it up and down an octave. And then we can take the entire pattern and shift it over so it starts at a different point in the pattern. So just keep in mind that it's dependent on the notes that you're playing. If I play one note, it's going to generate octaves above it to try and add some complexity based on what you've got right here. And you can see that with this range limiter, it's not going any higher. Like we should be getting a high note right here, but you can see that it actually can't go up to that C unless I drag this way up. So now let's have a listen. It's going to the highest note it possibly can, actually right here and right here. So the patterns tool is quite complex. There's a lot more to it. So definitely dig into the manual on this one and learn about some of these other features that you can do with it. But one more thing that I really like about it is you can go in and you can change velocity. So I can click on this guy right here and make it a lot softer. And make this one louder. Let's drag it up. Just click and push up. You can tie notes over just by clicking and dragging. So this kind of pattern tool might be neat for a bass patch in this one. Let's load up this FM Attack bass patch here. Disable the pattern tool just for a second. So let's go over to our patterns. Make sure I've clicked on the Midnight Runner one up here because I'm going to change it. And I found a really neat bass pattern. It's this rhythmic bass one. Double click on that one. Turn the pattern generator on. So now if we know the bass notes, we can actually generate just a simple bass pattern, one note, with the pattern tool. Maybe click and add some variation in the velocity. And we'll crank this one up and bring this one down. And now what we can do is put this little bass line in. All right, that sounded pretty cool. So the next tool we're going to look at is the arpeggiator. So I've got a little patch here from Bouquet. I'm going to click on the tools up top, make sure I do that, and then I click on the arpeggiator and double click. Just like you'd imagine, this one is fairly simple. You hold down a chord, and it's going to arpeggiate between the notes that you're playing. So you might ask why have an arpeggiator as a tool that you could use inside Kontakt. And to me, it's about making tools that work with every single instrument that you have in Kontakt. So some instruments have arpeggiators built into them already, but if you have just one tool that you know how to use for every instrument, it kind of simplifies things a little bit. So we can change the order of the notes that you play. You can make the steps go faster or slower. So let's change this to 30 seconds. And we can, of course, add some swing. We can make the notes a longer duration. We can take it up an octave. Watch what happens if we do that. If you don't play chords, how are you going to use the Arpeggiator tool? Well, I'm glad you asked that because, of course, we can click on the next slot and we can go, all right, let's go to chords and let's load up a chords preset. So now, that's not working very well, is it? Because it's actually feeding into the wrong spot. So what we'd want to do in this case is move the chord generator in front of the arpeggiator. So now these chords are feeding into our arpeggiator tool. So that would be my big suggestion to people who don't play keyboards. Use the Chords tool in front of the arpeggiator to get it to generate all these complex arpeggios. So next one we'll look at really quickly is the chord builder. So I'll click up top, click on the chord builder, double click. And with the chord builder, this one is basically just building single chords. So that's generating a major chord right now. We can go in and say, let's make a major 7 with a 9. And this kind of trick, you can take a complex jazzy chord, move it around by semitones, and you can get yourself some really interesting little vibes going right away. So that's a major chord. Let's do the same thing with a minor chord. But just be aware that every key that you play is going to have that minor 7 with a 9 on it. So every kind of conceivable chord, including the minor major 7, think about like those old spy movies. You can also do a user chord and go in and put in your own pitches or take things up and down the octave. We also have the Humanizer. We're going to try putting the Humanizer onto this 24-karat drums that we have. And what I'm going to do is click on the tool slot, double click on the Humanizer, and this is going to add some variation. Obviously, we don't want to add variation in pitch on this one. In this case, all we want to do is play around with the timing a little bit and maybe the velocity of these drums. So in order to really hear what's going on, let's add some hi-hats in here. So those are all the exact same velocity. Let's go and change the velocity with the Humanizer tool and see what happens. So you can see it's adding variation to the notes that are passing through it. So let's click on Tools and put the Humanizer on a synth sound. So let's hear my note. I've got something recorded in here, just a bunch of notes repeating. Let's play with the velocity. Let's play with the pitch. This is a way to generate some very strange MIDI out of just single notes that are triggering over and over again. So one more tool that we can look at is Scale Lock. And this one could be a lot of people's favorite new tool. The way this one works is it forces your MIDI into a key, which can be super useful if you're not a keyboardist. So let's look at my little idea that I've got right here. It's in E flat major. That's a fairly complex key. You've got 3 black notes in there. I put it in E flat, and it's now keeping me in the key of E flat. Let me turn that off just for a second. These are the notes I'm playing. And it's changing those notes into the key of E flat. Let's try this speaking lead from 24-karat keys. So watch this. I'm going to play only white notes, even though I'm in the key of E flat. Let's see how this works. So yeah, you still have to know how to play in the key of C major, practice those scales. but it's keeping everything perfectly in the key of the song. So this could be super useful for people who are new to the keyboard, just want to mess around and try some ideas out. And of course, we can change it into all sorts of other modes here. So you've got the major and minor, those are the most important ones, but then you've got things like Dorian, which is a whole other level of music theory that we're not going to get into right now. But do keep in mind, of course, this works with chords and stuff as well. Let's try a piano. So I'm just going to play in sixths. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes apart. Let's see what that sounds like. Very cool. Really digging this scale lock tool. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that one. So now with this Claire Avant patch, let's go up to Tools and we'll look at the one last tool, which is a velocity curve. Double click on that one. And of course, this one is going to take your MIDI and it's going to transform whatever it's receiving from your keyboard into whatever you determine the velocity response of your keyboard to be. If you have a keyboard that just is a little too expressive, all I have to do is grab this shape knob right here. And if I drag this down, so I play it at 100, it's making it 53. And vice versa, if I go the other way, the notes are going to get louder quicker as I progress up the velocity levels. Versus, I really have to dig in when I'm playing that way. So that wraps up the tools section. Just be aware that these tools go so much deeper than I've shown in this video. There's other videos that will be linked in the description of this video, so you can go and dig a little bit more into the details of each of these tools. So the next thing I'm going to show you is completely new to Kontakt 8, and that is something called Leap. You're going to find Leap in both Kontakt Player and in the full version of Kontakt 8. And you can think of Leap as a way to manipulate loops and samples in a super creative way, including things that you can do in real time with perform effects. So to get to Leap, there's two ways we can do it. From the browser, we can click on the Leap tab and we can see just our Leap libraries that we have installed. And you can see that I've got a bunch here, including some from a third-party manufacturer, which is, in this case, Wave Alchemy. We also have the Native Instruments ones that come with Kontakt 8, and there's even some free ones that come with the Kontakt Player. The other way to get to Leap is to get out of the browser and just go New Leap Preset. And here you're going to see that you can actually load up your own samples into Leap. But let's start with some Leap presets. So I'm going to click on Jazz Hop. When you first open up Leap, you'll see that you've only got a small range of 2 octaves and a bit more of sounds, loops, and then these other things called perform effects. So the sounds and loops are all loaded onto the white keys. And then the other keys that you have with Leap are these green keys, or the black keys, technically. And what they are showing is something called perform effects. So you can see as I play each white key down at the bottom, we're triggering one of these different 16 loops or samples. If you play a bunch of them at the same time, you can hear I've got kick here and snare right here, but it's all going to play in time. The black keys above that, which are colored green, show us where the perform effects are. And perform effects are ways to tweak your samples in real time. So just to demonstrate that, these 2 perform effects will take things up an octave or down an octave, but keep it in time. So watch what happens if I play a bunch of loops. And the perform effects do all sorts of things like reversing, fast forwarding, we have grain reversing, so a little bit of granular mangling going on, and it's all happening in real time to all of your loops that you're holding down. So if I click on the perform effects tab up top, you can see what we have loaded up. So you can see these icons right here correspond to these icons up top, and this one, and so on. And what we can do is we can change the perform effects that are loaded by clicking this little drop down. If I click the black key, this first C sharp right here, if I click that one, we're going to get speeds it up. This here is a granular type effect. So let's listen to what the reverse grain does. Let's try a couple of these loops at the same time. So just adding some variation to loops in real time. That's what this is all about. So let's get out of the Perform Effects for a sec and see what else we've got in here. You'll see that there is this group and single. If I click on this loop right here and hit this little piano button, you'll see that it switches over to single. Now what I can do so now it's playing that sample and it's mapped it out over the keyboard for me. Let's go back into group and let's try another one. So this one right here, maybe we want to map that out to the keyboard. So now put on some delay. So you can hear that that is a way to actually just play a sample. And of course, if you drag your own samples in, that's a really nice way to just quickly set up a patch that you can manipulate with the effects and stuff in Leap, but load up a sample really quickly, map it out to your keyboard. So you can see with the macros, we're getting control over things like compression, delay, and reverb. If we click on the edit page, that's when you can see the actual loop that you're playing. And if we click reverse on this little clap and go back to the snare, you can see that it is not being reversed. So they're kind of specific to each loop. With the playback engine right here, you can see that we can set it to classic, melody, or beats. We can add character to the sound, emulating some of the classic samplers. We can play with the formants and work with the overtones and generate different sounds out of each individual loop. We can reverse loops, change the speed. So now it's going twice as fast. We can play with the tuning, all sorts of classic things that we'd expect to see from a sampler. We can also dig into the sound of it, play with the filter, play with the attack and the release, all of that kind of good stuff. And then we've also got send effects in here, so you can choose different types of delay and different types of reverb to have on your loops. In order to make your own Leap preset, all we have to do is go up to the Contact menu, New Leap Preset, and we're ready to start dropping in some samples. So each expansion that you might have installed on your computer from Native Instruments will come with a whole bunch of loops and one-shots in it. So I could go to, let's see, one of my favorites. Let's go to Create Cuts right here. And as long as I'm on loops, I'm now just looking at the loops in that expansion. So let's type in piano and just look at the piano ones. So let's take this loop right here and we're just going to drag it right onto this first slot. And now if I play it, and right away we can start playing with the Perform effects. So a really good way to load up some of your favorite loops, get them all loaded up, and you could be triggering these at the appropriate moments of, say, a live performance or something like that. And we'll see that they are all tempo synced. So what Leap is going to do is it's going to try and pitch shift the samples, and it's going to keep the speed the same, and it's going to try and keep them all in the same key. So you can hear that even though these loops were all in different keys, they kind of work together. And let's change the key now. We're going to go to D major. Whoops, I've got to put that one in the right play mode. There we go. Sometimes you might see a major tonality here, but it could be the relative minor as well. So that's probably one of the neatest features of this, is the fact that it's putting your loops into the right key for you, whether you know about that kind of stuff or not. So definitely worth learning about, but that's the kind of stuff that Leap is going to do really well for you. The other thing, of course, that we could do is drag in a one shot. Let's find a chord. Okay, that sounds nice. We're going to drag it onto this slot right here, and then we're going to click the single mode, and now we can hear that chord. And you can hear that the timing of that thing Even though it is not technically a chord, it's keeping the timing the same because of the type that we've chosen right here. So it's going to try and keep the timing exactly the same. So there's all sorts of other things like choose where it starts. If you had a little bit of dead sound before a sample, you could turn on a loop and set up points to loop between. If you hold down the key, you can choose how it plays. Does it play like a classic one shot where you hit the note and it plays the whole thing? Or do you have to hold the key down and then as soon as you release it, it stops, right? So all of the classic ways that you can manipulate samples, you can do right within Leap. Make sure you watch Native Instruments' video on Leap. It goes into much greater detail. The next thing I want to show you is combined instruments. This is a way you can layer multiple instruments inside one instance of Kontakt. So to get to combined instruments, all we have to do is click on the combined icon up at the top. And over in the right-hand side, we'll see all the patches in your libraries that have either multi-layered instruments in Kontakt, or they have an instrument plus some tools. These three lines are going to indicate that it's a patch that has multiple instruments. So if I double click on this one right here, we're going to get a Porphyra patch that has 4 different instruments all layered. And we can see those 4 instruments over on the left-hand side. So next thing you can do is you can solo just one of the instruments, you can mute just one of them, you can pan them left or right or keep them in the middle, and you can adjust the volume of each of them like a little mixer right here. You can also just click the X to get rid of any that you don't want. And that is what multi-layered instruments look like in Kontakt. That's what they look like over in the library. But we can also click this Show Tool Enhanced Only button, and that's going to show us multi-layered instruments that have tools in them as well. So if you have updated Analog Dreams or Ethereal Earth, those ones come with new tool enhanced patches. So I can double click on a patch on the right hand side, and now we get a patch that has tools already attached. And in this case, you can see it's actually just one instrument attached to a pattern. If you go and start making some changes, maybe we'll play with the balance here. There we go, that sounds interesting. Play with the filter, play with the reverb. Okay, so we're happy with our new patch, and maybe we make a change to this. Let's change it to 16th notes. And now we can save this as our own combined instrument. So I'm going to go up to the Kontakt menu and save multi as. Let's call this Night Jeff, and I'm just going to go save. And now we're going to go back to the library. And now you can see my patch shows up right in the list of Analog Dreams patches. So a really quick way for you to go in, change a patch, make it something that works for you and maybe something that you want to use in the future. Just go save that multi right in the default location, and it will pop up later on for you in the Analog Dreams folder. So let's make another Kontakt patch here, and I'm going to show you how you could create an orchestra multi. So let's click on bowed strings, and we'll start with the string ensemble. Double click on it. So we got our string ensemble. Let's go add another instrument. So I'm going to click the plus right here, and this time I'm going to go over to the brass ensemble. So all I got to do is double click as long as I'm on that next slot. And then let's take the string ensemble, pan it a little bit to the left, take the brass ensemble, pan it a little bit to the right. And let's turn the strings down a bit and the brass up. Okay, another slot. Don't forget to click on the slot when you're adding new instruments. I want to click on this lower slot or else I'm going to replace the one that I'm selected on. So let's go to Woodwind Ensemble. We will just make a humongous patch here. So now we have 3 layered orchestral instruments. We can pan them left and right. We can arrange them the way we want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a special folder for your multis. So I'm going to go save multi as, And I'm going to go right into the Kontakt 8 folder, and we're going to call this Jeff's Multis. I'm going to hit create. We're going to save that patch right in there. And then now what we're going to do is go back to the library, click on the little cog at the bottom, and I'm going to go and find that folder and make it available inside my library at all times. So I click the add button, and I go find my Jeff's Multis folder that I just made, and I hit open. Close that menu. And from now on, I'm going to have a little folder right here with Jeff's Multis in it. I can click on that. I can double click on the patch. So now you can store all of your multis in one easy to find spot in the library. And one thing I should mention when you're in this menu here is that if you are saving Native Instruments patches, all you can save is the patch itself. If you are using your own things that you have created, you will have options like patch plus samples or monolith, where it can store all of the relevant files for that patch in that one spot on your folder. So that's something that's not available to us because we're using licensed Native Instruments stuff in this situation. And the monolith option is just one giant file as opposed to that folder with all of the samples in it. So that's something that you could easily send to somebody else if they wanted to use it on their projects. The last thing we're going to go through is the output section of Kontakt. So if we look at this drum instrument that we've got here, this is 24 karat drums. So we have all these different drums in this patch. And right now it's all coming into your mixer in Cubase in one spot. And so we can't individually go touch the kick drum and the snare and the hi-hat separately from each other. So there's definitely a way to do that in Kontakt. We need to approach instruments a little bit differently depending on the situation. So for something like this drum kit has a whole bunch of samples in it. And if we click on the kit, we can see the samples that are in it. So here's our kick, here's a snare, rim shot, another snare. So as you can see on each sample, it has a little thing that says out. And if we click where it says out and change it to set all pads to sequential outputs, it's going to set this one to output 1, this one to output 2, 3, 4, etc. Because in Kontakt, you can have multiple outputs coming out of this virtual instrument inside your DAW. And every DAW is going to configure this a little bit differently. But once we've done this kind of thing in Kontakt, we can go over to your DAW, and I'm going to go in Cubase, I'm going to go up to Studio, VST Instruments. Under my 24K drums right here, I'm going to click this little symbol that says Activate Output. We're going to turn on all of the outputs that we want for those 16 different samples. We can even make these mono if you want. We'll leave these on stereo for now. So now if I go over to the mixer in Cubase, we can see all of those different instruments showing up in this multiple output scenario. So I can turn up the snare, EQ the bass drum, maybe make it a little bassier. We could even go in and add an insert effect on this one. So let's put a realm right on there. And then of course you can pan things, all of that kind of stuff that you might want to do to the mix of something like a drum set. So it's a great way to get control of the mix of multi-instruments. Kontakt 8 is such a powerful music production tool. Make sure you dig into the manual and really learn about the things that are going to be important to you and how you create music. Thanks for watching.